4 o'clock, and as been our past experience, we need to start right on time. So welcome everyone to the Indian River County Hospital District. If we could, we'll stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Well, again, welcome. I'd like to acknowledge we have new board member, Dr. Chuck Mackett is with us here today. He's from previously the chief medical officer at Indian River Hospital and a physician internist. I don't see Alan Jones here. He's on Zoom. He's on Zoom. Alan, welcome. He's a previous board member. This will be his second term. And also to recognize Karen Deagle here back for her third term re-election, and myself for another term, so we welcome all of you, as well as recognizing past Indian River Hospital District Board members, Mary Beth Cunningham and Anne-Marie McChrystal. Welcome for joining us. And also Matt Reiser, who represents the hospital district. He is actually the representative of the Indian River County Hospital Board. So welcome to all of you for the meeting here at 4 o'clock. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our parliamentarian and attorney of record, Jennifer Peschke. And Jennifer,
Okay, on the agenda, before the organizational matters, we do have the attorney's overview, which is how the agenda is put together, so I'm going to read that into the record. That's something we prepared some months ago and have included in the packet in the past, and I had just recommended with new members to the board that we include it again, so I'm going to read that into the record, and then we'll go into the organizational matters. The Indian River County Hospital District is an independent special taxing district located in Indian River County, Florida, created and incorporated by Chapter 61-2275, Special Acts of the 1961 Legislature, Laws of Florida as amended. The governing board of the district is comprised of 7 publicly elected trustees, all of whom have been duly elected by the residents of the district in accordance with the provisions of Section 3 of the Special Act of the Florida Legislature creating the Indian River County Hospital District. To be eligible to sit on the board of trustees, all applicants running for election and sitting trustees must comply with the Code of Ethics for all publicly elected officials found within Part 3, Chapter 112 of the Florida Statutes. At regular and special meetings of the board, business shall be transacted in such order as the board may from time to time determine. Voting upon all matters coming before the board shall be by voice vote unless a vote by roll call shall be demanded by a member of the board, in which case the secretary shall call the roll call and the manner of voting of each member present shall be noted in the minutes. 4 physically present trustees constitutes a quorum, and an affirmative vote of at least 3 trustees shall be necessary to the transaction of any business of the district. All board meetings shall be conducted in a manner consistent with the district's bylaws as amended and restated and in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order and the applicable provisions of Florida law. In the event of a conflict between the bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order, the district's bylaws as amended and restated shall govern. Meetings shall be conducted under the direction of the chairperson. Courtesy shall be extended by all participants to all other participants. Comments by all participants shall be limited to issues under discussion and shall not include personal attacks or innuendo. Business conducted at board meetings shall be limited to agenda items. Counsel for the district shall serve as the district's parliamentarian. The chairperson shall consult the parliamentarian whenever necessary. In providing an opportunity for public participation at its public meetings, the Indian River County Hospital District has adopted the following reasonable rules and policies which will ensure the orderly conduct of a public meeting and which will require orderly behavior on the part of those persons attending and making public comment. The public shall be given the opportunity to comment on a matter that comes before the district board prior to the board taking a vote on a given matter that does not constitute simply a ministerial act. When an individual wishes to comment on a matter to be voted on by the board that is not purely ministerial in nature, public comment will be called for by a board member, and an individual wishing to make public comment must approach the podium and identify himself or herself by name and address at such time as public comment is called for before a vote is taken. Each individual requesting the ability to make public comment must limit his or her comment to no greater than 5 minutes to address the board. If the individual making public comment represents a group and is addressing the board on behalf of that group, the individual must identify himself or herself by name and address and also identify the group that he or she represents. Only one representative from any group may make public comment on any given item for board discussion and vote, so that only one member of a given group is commenting on a given agenda item. The Indian River County Hospital District Board of Trustees acknowledges that comments made at public meetings can have an impactful effect on public opinion. As such, members of the public making comments, whether outright or in response to public comment, shall base comments on factual basis and not merely on personal opinions. Following guidelines from Robert's Rules of Order for public participation in board meetings shall be observed. Speakers are requested to use the centrally located microphone and lectern when available. Prior to addressing the board, all speakers should state their name, address, and organizational affiliation. If any, questions and comments should be addressed to the entire board, not to individual trustees. When a specific topic is under consideration, questions and comments should be confined to the matter under discussion and not extended to any other matter. A limit of 5 minutes shall be allotted to each speaker on any given item, provided, however, that the chairperson may limit or extend the time period for speakers on a particular item. The board may override the chairperson or vote to limit or extend the time period by a majority vote of the trustees present and voting. A speaker does not need the entire 5 minutes. They may not yield any unused portion of the time to another speaker. On controversial issues, speakers for and against a given topic may be recognized alternatively by the chairperson. Board members may question a speaker for the purposes of clarification or information. It is expected that speakers will observe the commonly accepted rules of courtesy, decorum, dignity, and good taste. Personal attacks will be ruled out of order, as will the use of intemperate, abusive, and defamatory language. Written statements will be received by the board in addition to or in lieu of oral presentations. Public comment may also be invited at any time by the chairperson or by a majority vote of the board. Public comment shall be solicited on major motions and before the conclusion of a regular meeting. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jennifer.
All right, now we're going to go into our election of officers. The bylaws of the Indian River County Hospital District require that the district reorganize at the first meeting of each year and elect 5 officers. Any members may make a nomination for any of the 5 offices. The 5 offices to be voted on include chairman, vice chairman, secretary, assistant secretary, and treasurer. Each office will be elected by calling for nominations, a second nomination, and a motion to close the nominations. We will be taking floor nominations for each of the offices by voice vote. It is important to understand that while it's been our practice to call for a second for each nomination, a second is not required to be nominated. We will take nominations until no one else requests to make a nomination, at which time, hearing no further nominations, I will announce that the nominations are closed. If you are nominated and don't wish to serve at the conclusion of the nominations and before we vote on the nominees in the order nominated, please rise and state you decline the nomination. The nomination for each office will be voted on in the order the candidates are nominated. The first candidate to receive a majority vote will be nominated to that office. A majority vote is more than half of the total number of people voting. So in this case, if 7 people are voting, a majority vote will be 4. You may nominate yourself. I will announce the candidates to be voted on in order I hear the nominations made. I will do my very best to do this in a fair manner. If I cannot determine who is nominated first, we will start the process over. Are there any questions at this time before we begin?
I have an observation and then a question. Just, and Jennifer, just to be clear, I understand the process from yesterday. Just to be personally familiar with it, I went through, I know you guys will be surprised, I went through Robert's Rules on my own and everything is good. I just want to read this one comment just to kind of give us context in this process. And before I say it, we're all friends, colleagues, and to quote The Godfather, none of this is personal, it's business. And I think that's probably a good spirit for us to have during this process. But at any rate, 46.39 on this specific process, it will be seen that under the procedure as described, it is necessary for members wishing to vote for a later nominee to vote against an earlier nominee. This fact gives an undue advantage to earlier nominees, and accordingly, a voice vote is not a generally suitable method for electing the officers of organized society. The unfortunate thing for us is we can't do anything other really than a voice vote because of the sunshine law and how we operate. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Perhaps we may want to change our bylaws at some time in the future, but we're obviously not in a position to do that today. Just kind of wanted to share that in terms of so that the hard mechanics are really understood first. And second of all, Jennifer, when I looked through this, I didn't see, is there a paring down? And this is a question I think we need to address before we start the process so that we don't get in the midst of it and then figure out how to unravel it. If there are 3 nominees and none of them get a majority, is there a methodology to pare that down? So for instance, and if there isn't one literally in the rules, are we in a position where we can go ahead before we start the process and say, look, we're just going to do the top 2 in a runoff race? These are questions that I think we need to answer before rather than in the midst of.
Yes, I did review that, and I want to address your first comment first. I did read that as well in reviewing this matter. As I stated yesterday, there are other ways to take a vote rather than from the floor or by voice vote. Organizations have nominating committees. There are ballot voting processes that can be put in place. As I did state yesterday, we can look at that for next year if we want to do that. That would require an amendment of the bylaws and certainly an evaluation of who and what we are and how that impacts Sunshine. So you're absolutely right about that. And I did see the same comments in Robert's rules about voice voting and the process we follow being disfavored when there's more than one nominee. And so in the past, as I also stated yesterday, we haven't really ever had a scenario where there's many nominees seeking an office. That may be different this year, but it hasn't happened previously. So again, we can look at options to change our bylaws, to change our voting processes for officers, but that won't impact today. On the second question, I also had the same thought when I was reviewing this on a paring down process, but everything that I did read and saw indicated that you cannot win election based on a plurality. You have to have a majority, and a majority is defined under Robert's rules as more than half of the total number of people voting. So if you have 7 people voting, more than half of 7 is 4. If you have 6 people voting, more than half of 6 is 4. 5, more than half would be 3, and there on down. So, I mean, at any point, if anyone is unsure on how someone has voted, or as the parliamentarian, if I am unsure, I'll call for a roll call vote, which means I would ask each of you to identify clearly who you voted for.
And Jennifer, and I hear what you're saying now, and I'm putting 2 and 2 together, and because we're truly looking at each vote as an independent election, and as such, I think your interpretation I agree with now that we're kind of hearing it out loud and having read the rules, that we really don't have a means to pare it down either. So thank you for addressing that.
And it could take a long time, so I want everyone to understand that, and at some point, you know, we could be here a while if we don't, you know, within the nomination process itself, pare it down for a given office if there are many interested and we can't achieve a majority, or someone that is nominated is, like I said, able to rise and decline the nomination if he or she doesn't want to continue in further rounds.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Is there any other questions or comments before we go into the election itself?
Yes,
Okay.
please. I was listening to the recording yesterday. Karen, I'm sure you did the same. Dr. Cooney, when you were talking about characteristics of the chairman, I want to talk about the chairman position first. That caused me to go back and look in our guidelines as to what the duties of the chairperson of this Board of Trustees is, how it's outlined in the bylaws. And then I started thinking about the characteristics that I thought would be helpful for the chairperson to have, because I didn't necessarily agree that it should only be a physician. That should be the only characteristic that we think about. So I looked at the duties of the officers, and so Jennifer, if you don't mind, I'm going to share some notes. The chairman of the board, according to the bylaws, shall preside at all meetings of the board and shall perform such other duties as may be set forth in the bylaws and are incident to this office. Works with the executive director routinely for daily operation, provides oversight, and evaluates the executive director annually. That doesn't speak to very much about a job description for a chairman of the hospital district trustees. So that's something that we might want to take a look at in the future, is clarify that more. But when I thought about it, and I think it's important that all the trustees come to some consensus on what we believe are the characteristic, skills, experience of the chairman. Some of the things I thought about that I would open for discussion if you so choose. I think someone who is a strategic thinker with a long-term perspective, not typically getting in the weeds. Understands the higher level role of the district and does not view the organization as a funder or a grant maker. We have a much broader purpose than that. Committed to a culture of collaboration, knowledgeable about the organization and board practices, understands that all trustees are engaged in the work, that the chairman is one of seven. One of seven. Everybody has a role, and the chairperson seeks to align trustee skills with opportunities and needs, able to run effective and productive trustee meetings, a valued partner of the executive director, capable of leaving all other hats at the door and focusing on their respective fiduciary responsibility to the organization. I would open this up for further discussion to make sure that we're all in alignment before we start the nomination process and seat the next chairman, what we believe this chairman should espouse, skills and characteristics, experience.
If I may comment, yesterday, I did, as acting chair, go through the choosing a chair, and everybody read the comments related to that. And basically, my principal, Carrie, was to look at our strategic plan, which Frank has outlined. There are 4 or 5 points, and then look at the qualities of the different individuals on the board and see how they align with the strategic plan. That was basically the message I was trying to convey to everyone, that we have a process. There's a lot of very talented people here, as I said yesterday too. I mean, it could be the chair and do very well at it, but maybe it should be aligned with where we want to go down the road in the future, because healthcare is a complicated process, as we all know at the time. Thank you for your comments. And I know you've been involved in succession planning for a while, so.
No, that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gary, that was well said, what you brought out with, and I think the most important thing is that we are just one of 7. I mean, you lead the meetings, you strategically plan, but you share all of that. And in the end, having no agenda, personal agenda, is very important. I think that's important for all of us, whether we are the chair or we're not. We're here for the good of the community. We're here to be fiduciary responsible with our good money from taxes from our people in the community, and that is shared by all of us. So whoever takes this seat should know that it is just that. It's a seat, it's leading the meetings, it is overseeing some of the daily operations that happen, but it is just one of 7 votes.
I'll jump in on something that's relevant. First, I'll say I do think that's a pretty poor description. I mean, it's something we clearly ought to take a look at.
I agree.
Can revise that for all of the positions. And this is appropriate to the chairmanship, but it's also appropriate to all of the trustees. I'm looking at the new guy, and Alan knows this, but there was a question that came up at the Finance and Audit Committee. We were reviewing the audit, which we'll get to later. And one of the members, we were looking at mission and vision. One of the members asked about, is there a statement of values? And I should have said absolutely, but I said, honestly, I'm not sure if there is. But subsequently, I went to our website. If you go to the landing page and scroll down toward the bottom, there are 6 values that are stated there. I'm not going to read each description, but the 6 that are noted are values, it's labeled. Stewardship, partnership, integrity, respect, accountability, and leadership. And I think the short 1 or 2 sentence descriptions bear taking a look at. I come from a nonprofit background, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but every time a new board comes in, it's an opportunity to take a look at some of the business, some of the ministerial stuff, re-sign a code of ethics, conflicts of interest,
On an
a
annual
commitment
basis.
to the value gap. So it's relevant to the topic that we're on right now, and also might be something that we could undertake. But I thought those values are important, and I certainly think all of us do ascribe to them, subscribe to them, and do our utmost to live by them. So those are my comments relevant to the broader issue, not specific to the election necessarily.
Any further comments from any of the board members? Okay, hearing no further comments, we'll go into the election, and I will call for nominations for the chairperson.
I nominate myself, Karen Deagle.
And I nominate Michael Kent. Excuse me.
I'll nominate myself, Carrie Bartlett.
Is there any further nominations for chairperson?
Well, I don't know if you can hear me or not. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I would nominate Bill Cooney.
Okay. Are there any further nominations for the chairperson? Okay. Is there again, it's not required, but it's customary that we call for this. Is there a second to the nomination for Karen Deagle?
Second.
Thank you. And Karen, are you willing to serve per the nomination?
I am.
Okay. Next, I heard a nomination for Michael Kent. Is there a second to that nomination?
Does Michael literally need to rise?
Yes, you do need to rise unless you physically have a problem where you can't stand.
He does not. On this occasion. I appreciate the faith and the nomination, but I will decline its acceptance at this point.
Okay. Okay, and next I heard a nomination for Carrie Bartlett. Is there a second to that nomination?
I would second that.
Okay,
Is my mic working? Couldn't get it to
Yeah.
pop on.
it is working, yes. Maybe you're just not right in front of it. Okay, and then I heard a nomination for Bill Cooney from Alan Jones. Is there a second to that nomination?
I'll second it.
Okay, that was Paul, seconded. Okay. Again, are there any additional nominations for the chairperson's role? Hearing none, we'll now close the nominations and proceed to vote in the order the nominations were heard. I heard a nomination for Karen, made by Karen Deagle, seconded by Chuck Mackett. I then heard a nomination for Michael Kent, made by Paul, which Michael then did rise and decline, so he will not be voted on as a nominee for this office. I then heard a nomination for Carrie, made, I believe, by Carrie and seconded by Michael. And I heard a nomination for Bill Cooney, made by Alan Jones and seconded by Paul. So we have 3 nominees, and we'll vote in the order that they were heard to determine if anyone nominated receives a majority. So all in favor of Karen Deagle serving as the board chair, please say aye.
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 I'm going to ask for a voice vote for the ayes and the nays as to Karen, please. Start here with Dr. Mackett.
Karen Deagle.
And that's an aye?
Aye.
Okay, Carrie?
Do I have to say nay or just?
You have to vote one way or the other.
Nay.
Okay. All right, Michael?
Nay.
Okay. Dr. Cooney?
Yes.
All right. Karen? And Paul?
Nay.
And Alan, yes, thank you. Alan? We're voting on,
Nay.
I'm sorry, say that again? All right.
Nay.
Okay, so I heard 3 ayes and 4 nays, so that is not a majority. We'll continue voting on the next person that was nominated and has accepted the nomination, and that would be Carrie. And again, I'm going to call for a voice vote so it's clear. Dr. Mackett?
Aye.
Okay. Carrie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Dr. Cooney?
Nay.
Okay, Paul?
Nay. Karen.
I'm sorry, Karen.
Nay.
And Alan?
Nay.
Okay, we do not have a majority. We have 3 ayes and we have 4 nays. So now we're going to go ahead and vote on the nomination for Bill Cooney for the chair. I'm going to go ahead and have a voice vote again. Dr. Mackett?
Aye.
Okay, Carrie?
Nay.
Michael?
Nay.
Dr. Cooney?
Aye.
Karen?
Nay.
Paul?
Aye, yay.
I'm sorry, which was that?
Yes.
Aye, yay?
I don't know what I said.
Okay. And Alan, we're voting on Bill Cooney for chair.
Yes.
Aye. So I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 ayes. Wait, let me see. I've got, you were an aye?
Yes.
Let me confirm that. Carrie was a nay.
Yes.
Michael was a nay. Bill Cooney was an aye. Karen was a nay. Paul was an aye.
Yes.
Alan, you were a yes, an aye.
Yes.
Okay, so that is a majority. We have 4 ayes for Dr. Bill Cooney as our chair and 3 nays, and that elects Dr. Cooney as the board chair.
Congratulations.
Okay. While that is finished, we are not finished with the elections. We're going to go to call for nominations in the exact same process for the vice chair. I'll call for nominations for our vice chair.
I nominate Carrie Bartlett.
Okay. Are there any further nominations for vice chair?
I would nominate Karen Deagle.
Are there any further nominations for vice chair? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to request seconds. First of all, are you both willing to serve as the vice chair?
Yes.
Carrie? Karen, are you willing to serve as the vice chair?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second for the nomination to Carrie Bartlett serving as our vice chair?
I'll second.
Okay. And is there a second to Karen serving as our vice chair?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I heard Carrie first, so we're going to vote on Carrie first for the vice chair. Again, we're going to do voice vote because that's the easiest for me to track this with. So Dr. Mackett, Carrie for vice chair, what is your vote?
Aye.
Okay. And Carrie? Aye. All right, Michael?
Aye.
Okay. Dr. Cooney?
Nay.
And Karen?
Nay.
Okay. Paul?
Aye.
And Alan, this is for Carrie for vice chair.
Yay. Yes.
Okay. So I've heard 5 ayes, 5 yes, and 2 noes. So Carrie Bartlett will be our vice chair.
Congratulations.
Okay. And now we're going to call for nominations for our secretary.
I nominate Karen Daigle.
Okay. I've heard a nomination for Karen. Are there any further nominations? Okay. Is there a second to that nomination?
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded? Okay. Karen, are you willing to serve as the secretary?
I am.
Okay. I will go ahead and do a voice vote on that. So we have a nomination for Karen as our secretary, seconded by Michael Kint. The nominee has indicated she's willing to serve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Karen will be our board secretary. We also need an assistant secretary. In case the secretary is unable to attend or review the minutes, this is a very helpful position. I'll ask for a nomination for assistant secretary at this time. We need somebody to do it.
I'll nominate Dr. Mackett. I know you said you didn't want to, but this is so far outside of my skill set. I'd be a disaster.
Okay, I've heard a nomination for Dr. Mackett as our assistant secretary. Okay. And are you willing to serve?
I am.
Are there any other nominations for the Assistant Secretary? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on Dr. Mackett for our Assistant Secretary. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Dr. Mackett will be our Assistant Secretary. And then last but very much not least is our Treasurer.
Nominate Mike.
I second.
I'm sorry, who did you nominate?
Mike Kent.
Michael Kent, okay. Nomination for Michael Kent, and who seconded that?
did.
Okay. Michael, are you willing to serve?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any further nominations for treasurer? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and proceed to vote. All in favor of Michael Kent continuing as our treasurer?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, we will go ahead and elect Michael Kent as our board treasurer, and that does conclude our elections for this year.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Well done.
Well done, Jennifer.
Frequency of meetings, time, day of meetings, and meeting location?
Yes, let me look at
Does
that.
that need, I mean, we just assume, or does that?
So this is an organizational meeting as well, so I'm going to let Frank and Kate comment on that as to the proposed frequency of meetings, time, date of meetings, and the meeting location. Typically, we have always had our chairman's meetings the third Wednesday of the month at the district office, and we reorganize here each month on the third Thursday for our monthly meetings.
Just to clarify.
I'll defer to Kate.
Yeah, just to clarify, Jennifer, it's not the third Wednesday.
I'm
We
sorry.
go off the third Thursday, and the chairman's meeting
So you're
happens the
right.
day before.
Sometimes it
the
doesn't fall
month-
the third
yes,
Wednesday. That is a
Sometimes the month
misstatement.
can start on a Thursday or a Wednesday, so we always go by this.
Third
our-
Thursday.
Our required board meeting is the meeting that we have, and then the chairman's meeting is a special meeting that we're not required to have, but typically have it and try to put that in the yearly meeting schedule so everyone can accommodate their schedules for the year.
And so after tonight, once we settle on that, you'll be circulating the meeting schedule and it'll be posted on the website as well.
Correct, if it's approved.
So I'll make a motion. I guess it probably does take a formal action on our part. I move that for the coming calendar year, our board meeting be scheduled for 4 o'clock at this location on the third Thursday of the month, that our chair meeting be at our boardroom in our office on the Wednesday preceding the third Thursday of the month, commencing at 10 a.m. for both of those meetings.
Second.
You propose the Thursday meeting be at 10 a.m. as well?
No, I said
You said
4
4.
p.m.
You said 4.
Oh, I heard you say 10 a.m. for both meetings. Okay.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meetings will continue to be as they've been. The monthly meeting on the third Thursday here at the County Commissioners Chambers at 4 o'clock, subject to room availability, which Kate will confirm. And the chairman's meetings will be the day prior at the district's office at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I guess we'll move ahead here with our consent agenda. Minutes of December 18th are available for review, and December 19th. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. We need a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Yes.
Thank you. Second? Want to
We
change
need
anything?
to
Any
approve the
discussion?
January disbursement as well.
Okay, yes.
$1,549,364.70.
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second? I'll second that. All approved?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we'll go on to our usual reports. Again, back to you, Jennifer, the district council report.
Yes, I'm doing a lot of talking in this meeting. I don't talk this much usually at this meeting. Okay, So the third item I have to present to you today is just my monthly council report. As always, I've responded to each of your questions as they arise pertaining to various matters that we're handling at the present time and continue to be available to each of you whenever you do need my counsel. We're continuing to review, especially in this new year, the annual deadlines and deliverables due to the district under the lease that we have with the Indian River Cleveland Clinic entity, and have responded with questions as those arise. We did close on December 19th on the purchase of property for a future women's sober living facility, and are now beginning the process to work to assume, what we do as a property owner over there. And coming forward in the coming months will be information to put together an RFP and to prepare the property for its future intended use. We've participated and continue to participate and assist as needed with the trustees' strategic planning efforts and continue to remain available to each of you in that regard. We participated in our annual budget funding cycle, as we always do at this time of year, and also I am continuing to work with Jenny as we have some straggler agreements still coming in or edits that happen to them so that we have a proper archive on our file. And I also wanted to mention, I am working still on the research that was requested of me at our December 19th monthly meeting regarding conflicts of interest, the provision in our current lease that we have that puts the board chair from the Indian River County Hospital District with the ability to act as a ex officio member of the hospital's board and attend those meetings. And I will be bringing that to you for review just as soon as the work is completed. I did hope to have it for you this month, but our meeting was the 19th. My last day in the office was the 23rd, and I wasn't back until after the 6th. And so I feel that this is a matter that really deserves the time that it needs, and I didn't want to rush. And with these other things we had that we were tracking through the post-closing matters from the December 19th closing, and some of the other things that we had with new trustees coming on and getting each of the people bonded and 2 people's bonds canceled, there was just a few things going on. So again, I tried to get things to you pretty timely, but I feel that this just needs a little bit more time before it comes before you for review and consideration, and wanted to give it what it needed. So I will be bringing that to you as soon as I have it.
Very good.
Any
Thank you very much,
questions that
Jennifer.
any other questions that I can answer?
I had one question, perhaps Michael or Frank should answer it, though. On the closing date of December 19th, 2024, was that reflected in our financial reports? Was there actually checks written and cash dispersed and so on?
Yes, the payment was, yes. Man, I
Yes.
looked at it, yeah, it went down.
Correct. It went out December 19th.
I'm not sure what month it showed in.
And
The closing of the,
the closing. Yeah,
so that was wired, right?
It was wired. The money's not in the account now. Obviously, we paid for it. So the January financials
It wouldn't have been
won't
wired on the
reflect-
closing date
will reflect that.
or
Okay, we
Yes, I was the closing agent, so it was wired to my office, I believe, the day before. And then once we settled and everything was in order with the title insurance and all of the signatures, in accordance with what we do as any closing agent services, we wired it out to the seller per their wire instructions. So the funds left the district's accounts to get to my escrow at least the day prior, and then went back to the seller once we closed. And that's customary for a real estate closing. December 19th.
Well, you'll see it in the PDP account when you look at the financial investment.
when you do your refinance, I was just interested in what the reserve level was, via some comments that the reserve was such and such, and I didn't see that in the financial report, so maybe you could look to that. Thank you. Michael, you'll be next, financial statement.
Fellow trustees, as we enter 2025, I'm pleased to report the financial condition of the hospital district remains very solid. Let's take a closer look at the district's financials through December 31st by reviewing the cash and investment snapshot and the year-to-date versus actual expense spreadsheet, which again are always those last 4 pages of the financial section in your packet. On the last page, at the top of the district's investment and cash snapshot, you'll see that at the end of 2024, we had received $17,884,811 of ad valorem taxes. That's 84.6% of what's budgeted. As a point of reference, last fiscal year at this time, we'd received 81% of our budgeted tax revenue. And as I stated at last month's meetings, kudos to the homeowners in Indian River County who make their tax payments in the first quarter of the fiscal year. It not only saves them money, but there is added value to the district because of our ability to invest these funds for a few months until they are needed to pay expenses. It was recently suggested that I explain a little more fully the first two sections of this snapshot, as they are reporting on these investments held by the district. Section 1 details our investments in U.S. Treasury bills, and Section 2 details our holdings in the preferred deposit pool at the Florida Fixed Income Trust. All of these monies come to the hospital district through ad valorem taxes, and it's important for everyone to understand that these funds can only be invested in very specific and limited ways that are defined by Florida statutes for special districts such as the hospital district. None of these public funds can be put at risk, and all allowed investments protect the principal through either FDIC-insured bank deposits or qualified public depository accounts. Maintaining appropriate reserves is part of the fiduciary responsibility of the hospital district. These reserves will be available to the district to further our core mission and vision for improving the health of all county residents. Reserves are there in case of an emergency or unforeseen need that arises in the county. And I will point out that over the past 3 years, the district has budgeted and utilized over $3 million of our reserves to provide for the costs of program and services to those in need. The bottom line is that reserves are prudent, they're important, and required as part of the district's financial management of the public's tax revenue. Okay, there endeth the financial lesson for the day. Back to the specifics of the snapshot in front of you. Section 1 updates that our U.S. Treasury bills total $7,962,601. And the maturity dates for those T-bills are laddered or staggered monthly between now and July 31st of 2025. Section 2 updates the district's holdings in that preferred deposit pool, the money market account. And you'll see that as of December 31st, it held $11,610,462. And the third section shows what is in our local bank accounts at Seacoast. Those are our operating accounts, which we're holding $973,879 at the end of December. Altogether, the district's investment and cash holdings totaled $20,546,942. It also notes at the end of the calendar year, it's always there, but I don't always point it out, that at December 31, 95% of all cash was invested. We're doing all that we can to earn a return on the public's money. If you would now turn 3 pages back to page 1 of the year-to-date expenses versus budget spreadsheet, you'll note the header on the 2 right columns shows that expenditures, if they were distributed monthly throughout the fiscal year evenly, we'd be at 25% for all of our funded programs and for the district's administrative costs. As usual, as you scan through those 2.5 pages, you'll see a variety of percentages, but what you won't see, as we did in the last couple of months, any programs or agencies at 0%. We do have 2 or 3 that ask for reimbursements on a quarterly basis, so they have received their first draw against budget. On the middle of page 3 of that spreadsheet, you'll find that the total for all program expenses through December was $4,155,288, and that computes to 22% of what had been approved in the total program budget. And then the bottom half of that last page, page 3, shows the district's administrative expenses, and you can see that for the first quarter of the fiscal year, they totaled $272,624, which is 20.4% of the budget. So combined total program and admin expenses totaled $4,427,912, or 21.9%. Just as a point of comparison, at this point last fiscal year. Our total expenses were slightly higher at 22.3%. Mr. Chairman, with that, that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the trustees might have, if I can.
Yeah, Michael, I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
I noted that a few of the expenses were running ahead of the expected 25% spend,
Yes.
and noted that in the VNA, the hospice house, was actually quite a bit over budget. It was running at 66.7. Some others were, but they weren't at the dollar value of this.
Right.
Is that, do we know if that trend line is expected to continue?
I would imagine that if that is the case, and Frank or Jenny, you may know something if there have been communications, if that is a trend that they anticipate is going to continue, they'll be here and talk to us about it. That
Yeah,
has
also-
happened in the past. 3 months in, it is a little early to be so significant, but again, I didn't question it at this point in time, but I don't know if we've got Lundy or anybody here from BNA.
Let me see, Jenny or Kate, can you?
I know last month when Lundy presented, he had said that they were utilizing hospice in, other ways. So I'm sure Jenny will.
Well, I will follow up.
Yeah.
on
I was gonna
that.
say, it's not
Yeah, we'll look
inappropriate.
into it.
didn't-
Follow
it
up.
wasn't
A quick
brought to my
follow-up
attention,
on that. It's a
but
good point, Chuck.
We'll follow up.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Any other questions for Michael, Treasurer? Okay. Moving ahead, then Frank, would you give us an Executive Director report?
Mr. Chairman, a brief report today. So a couple follow-up items first. We completed the draft of the Common Funding Request Policy, which we talked about last meeting. The goal of this is to establish a standardized framework for evaluating and approving funding requests specifically related to healthcare expenses that may not directly involve patient care. This policy, in addition to the letter of intent that we talked about that Jenny put together for this year and we've walked through in detail for new applicants and our revised funding application, which we're looking forward to discussing with the trustees, will be included in the chairman's agenda for February for detailed review and discussion. On December 23rd, a letter of congratulations that I was asked to send on behalf of the board was sent out to Dr. Delaney. I attached a copy in the packet. Some exciting news, and the information just came in today, but Clearview Research, our study, has successfully completed our first annual healthcare access and outcomes survey. This was a representative and evidence-based effort to gather critical data about our county relative to access and outcomes. This will provide us on an annual basis with insights that will augment other data sources, guiding our efforts and investments with greater precision. The results will be shared with all community partners to support their services and help them better meet the needs of those that they serve. We received the report today, and Caitlin and I had a chance to look at it and glean some pretty exciting insights that we're looking forward to share. We have a walkthrough call with Clearview Research next week. Once we walk through it and get some more information, we'll share it with the board. The district also finalized the management discussion and analysis, part of the audit and other sections of our audit that Kip Jacoby will talk about later. This year's analysis included enhanced details to improve transparency and provide deeper insights, such as a comprehensive millage analysis. Kip Jacoby will be presenting this a little bit later on today, and if there's any questions, I'm looking forward to discussing that some more. On the medical education front, the district received an update from Dr. Rollins. We also did talk with Dr. Cannon recently regarding the status of adding Edward Via College of Osteopathic Medicine, also known as VCOM, to the list of schools approved for clinical residencies in Florida. The latest news we have is that the approval is currently pending the governor's signature. As far as timeline, we're still fine, we're okay. But the goal is for the governor to sign and allow VCOM to be added to a list of schools that can allow for clinical residencies in Florida. And then finally, I just wanted to mention the interview process for the finance and program support specialist role is progressing. The first group of candidates we have didn't work out as we hoped, but we have a second group of candidates which we're going to interview over the next 2 weeks. and I'll have more to report on that, hopefully some good news at our next meeting. So the last thing I would like to do, if I can find it.
You need a Will story?
Yeah, do you have it handy? Because I thought it was in my packet, and I, for some reason, cannot find it. I appreciate that. Thanks. So, Mental Health Association is going to speak a little bit later and give a report. And as I've been doing this fiscal year, I'd like to give an update on how the work of the district and this board is impacting our community directly with these personal stories. This story is about a 12-year-old boy named Will, who was a client of Mental Health Association. Will began showing signs of despair and self-harm. His middle school guidance counselor took quick action, referring him to Mental Health Association. Will's family, already burdened by financial challenges, had been unable to secure timely mental health care due to long wait lists and high costs. This is something we've been talking about. This isn't just a local thing, this is a national trend, and it's a big challenge in a lot of communities. One afternoon, seeking hope, Will and his parents visited MHA for a mental health screening, a service that requires no appointment and provides immediate access to care. During the session, Will spoke candidly about his feelings of depression, hopelessness, and anxiety. MHA's screener conducted a thorough suicide risk assessment, developed a personalized safety plan, and equipped Will's parents with critical knowledge and coping strategies to support their son. Grounding techniques were also introduced to help Will navigate moments of intense emotion. Within 2 weeks, Will was connected with a therapist, beginning his journey toward healing. 3 months later, Will reported a dramatic decrease in suicidal thoughts and a renewed sense of hope. His progress is a testament to the power of timely and coordinated intervention. Will's story took another meaningful turn when his father, inspired by his son's progress, sought help for his own struggles with depression. After being laid off, he had silently carried his burden, not realizing how much it affected his family. MHA provided him with the same compassionate care, guiding him to a therapist and starting him on his own path to recovery. Recognizing the family's broader challenges, MHA collaborated with Suncoast Mental Health's Wellness Without Walls program, connecting them to essential community resources. This comprehensive approach helped Will's family find stability and hope for the future. District funding made this life-changing support possible. By funding MHA's services, the district ensured that families like Will's could access care without financial barriers. Their investment not only transformed Will's life, but also strengthened his family, underscoring the importance of community-driven support in creating resilience and recovery. Will's journey reflects the impact of collaboration between schools, MHA, and other agencies in building a safety net for those in crisis. Together, these efforts turned a moment of despair into a story of hope and healing. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Thank you.
Frank, on behalf of the board, I want to say congratulations on presenting these reports. They bring some reality, some daily presence to the work which we do, so it's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I might. The common funding request policy that we're putting into effect, I did read through it. As much as we live, eat, and breathe the funding process, we're in the midst of it. I have to admit, I was looking at rent and utilities and trying to say, are we funding rent and utilities now? And I thought of Dynamic Life. We have a scholarship fund which helps some of the guys that can't afford to pay their rent there. I know it speaks to, we'll do that in unique circumstances, and I think the same holds for utilities, but are we funding much rent or utility? I'm looking to Jenny.
Yeah, there's only a few agencies that we do, and that's for programs, you know, where they don't provide services that they're reimbursable. So a lot of, and startups. We have done some rent for starting.
Okay, all right.
Michael, let me say this, if I may, is that since the time we sent the report out, since the time we completed that work and sent the report out, we've had a lot of discussion this week internally in the office. And one of the, as we started thinking about, some of just the one-offs and all the possibilities that have come our way over the years, and because Jenny and Kate have been here so long, they have a lot of the history, our thought turned to, does it make more sense? I like the idea of an all-inclusive rate, where the overhead, some of these items are rolled into, into an all-inclusive rate as we move more towards fee-for-service type of reimbursement. So the document that I delivered, that I worked on, and we put together some time ago, it may be moot, because the discussion I'd like to have at the chairman's is to talk about, and even with the letter of intent and the funding application, is making sure that the applications, the new applications we get through the LOI, and, we turn to, how are we going to help drive the district goals forward? And so that's part of a larger discussion, but I will say, that's a short list. There may be several other things that we didn't consider, but rolling some of these up into an all-inclusive rate might make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and I'm not a black and white guy, you know that. There's a lot of gray area in this universe. But there are some things that, I like the qualifier, although it's vague, unique circumstances.
Right.
But it gives us, it doesn't shut it out, but I think it sets a higher bar perhaps. I remember we were requested to pay for automobiles. Capital expenditures, capital equipment can be a slippery slope, and I've got concerns about some of those things, but just going through it, I thought I'd just ask because my brain just wasn't pulling out the particulars about whether, in very many cases, we were actually covering those expenses now.
And Frank, I appreciate that, we've had this conversation as a board, but moving toward the fee for services will tend to keep us out of the weeds a little bit on some of these things. And additionally, where it's focused on numbers of patients, our measurable outcome determinations may be a little more easily obtained. Additionally, there's an element here of, letting the marketplace by way of how these entities operate and internally take care of their own efficiencies. Perhaps some of the topic from yesterday, which is, okay, we're going to give you fee for services for patients. You have a responsibility to look for alternative sources that Ms. McChrystal brought up yesterday, that we kind of talked about yesterday. So moving in that direction, I think we're all kind of nodding our head, yeah, it's a good idea sort of thing, but I think that'll help us with this process too, and I appreciate you guys exploring that more.
If I could just one other thing, I think too, as we've grown with the district, I want the process for the trustees, for us to review and, review everything in a timely manner. I think we really need to streamline some things, and we need to simplify our process. And then on the back end of that, when we reconcile everything to make sure that we are 100% compliant and everything is dialed in and, all the dollars and cents work, that process has to be more simple. If we're getting multiple, invoices for all these different random things, that is very cumbersome on the office side, and it can be difficult to reconcile. So we're just looking for a cleaner process that would make more sense long-term, especially with the growth we've had.
Okay, is there any other questions related to report by Frank, our Executive Director? Okay, hearing none, let's go on now to our funded agencies and ask Dr. Cromer. Please come forward and give a presentation, if you will, Phil.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to say just congratulations to everyone who was nominated and elected. It was very smooth, and it was just nice to see as an audience member how easily it was done. So congrats to all of you. Pat on the back. I'll just get started. Good afternoon, trustees. Thank you for your continued support of the Mental Health Association. Your partnership is not only deeply appreciated, but absolutely essential in helping us change and save lives here in our community. The work we do without your invaluable assistance. So thank you for that. I'd like to take a moment to discuss the state of mental health in Florida, as well as Indian River County, the challenges we face, and the steps we're taking to address them. According to the most recent report from Mental Health America, currently Florida ranks 46th in the nation for access to mental health services. And this reflected in the closures of critical agencies in other places in the states, but also in our backyard here, including UF Psychiatry in 2024, and now Suncoast Mental Health, which will sadly close next month, which is very unfortunate. While we are managing the gaps these closures create, they put an added strain on our mental health providers. Fewer providers in the area mean increased pressures on our existing resources, and it's an ongoing challenge for our team to meet the rising mental health demands. However, despite these challenges, and there are many, we are seeing progress, and I want you to know that. Your support is making a difference. It's making a critical difference. For example, the number of Baker Acts at the Mental Health Association this fiscal year is lower than the previous year. So we're off to a really good start. This is an encouraging sign that our crisis prevention and early intervention efforts are really making a positive difference. Programs like the new Parent and Child Center, Walk-in Crisis Program, our several support groups, and community outreach are addressing mental health concerns before they escalate into more severe issues. This success proves that our approach is working, and with continued support, we can help even more individuals in need. However, the statistics around mental health and suicide, in particular in our area, remain concerning. Florida's suicide rate stands at approximately 14.1 per 100,000. This is according to the CDC. But here in Indian River County, our rate is higher, rising from 18.4 per 100,000 in 2022 to 19 in 2023. And while the rates for 2024 have not been released yet by the CDC, I remain hopeful, but these rates are not expected to reduce. We can hope, but I'm not sure. To put the rates into perspective, when you're looking at other states, for example, like Wyoming and Montana, Montana has the highest suicide rate of all 50 states. Both states are in the mid to high 20s. So 19 is not a great number for us, and we can do better. These figures underscore the urgent need for expanded mental health care, especially for our youth, whom suicide is now the second leading cause of death. We must intensify our efforts to support young people and ensure they have the resources they need to cope with life's many pressures. Looking ahead, we are focused on making meaningful strides over the next 5 years. We will expand our youth services. We're going to strengthen early intervention programs like the Parent and Child Center and work to fill the void left by the closure of programs like Erica's Lighthouse. Suicide prevention will remain a top priority as we continue to expand critical services and collaborate with our schools to address the rising rates of youth suicide. With your continued support and the backing of state and local leaders who recognize the importance of mental health, we are confident that we will continue to meet these challenges head-on. Together, we can ensure that mental health care is accessible to everyone in our community and that lives are saved in the process. Thank you for your time, your trust, your unwavering commitment to improving mental health in Indian River County. With that said, I'd like to invite two of my stars, two of my teammates here, Angela Gazinski and Heather Roberts. They are our COO and our CCO, Chief Operating Officer and Chief Clinical Officer, to join me at the podium so we can answer your questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cromer, for a very comprehensive report.
Thank you.
Appreciate all that you do, and I anticipate your move to across the hall and your area is all working out well? All your new
Yes, it's working
facilities
out
are-
well. Yep,
Very good.
we're off like a shot.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've got I think, an easy question. I'm just curious, relative to the drop-in center, 84 unduplicated clients and the number of visits. So the 84, they're about every 10 days. And my question is, has that maintained? Is that up? Is that down? Does it shift? I mean, 84 is not a huge cadre, but it's a group that obviously appreciates the fact that it's a place for them.
Yeah, the number varies quite a bit, and I'll have Angela just take a peek to see if we have any comparison data.
I'm just curious more than anything.
It comes and goes, you know, it's like the screenings in the walk-in center. I mean, we average maybe just a few a day. Lately, it's been 8 to 10. They come and they go, so it's just kind of hard to tell. I think that's probably a good average, 80-ish to 100.
Okay.
And if you haven't been there to the drop-in center, it is
I've
quite
been there in a while.
It's a remarkable place. I mean, the work that we do at the clinic is really important, but the drop-in center is focused more on individuals with really severe and persistent mental illness. A lot of these folks may not even be right for like ongoing therapy, but they really find a place there. It's peer-run, peer-supported. They get to do classes and learn about how to reduce their own depressive symptoms and alcohol and drug classes. So it really is such a haven for people.
How many years has that been open? It's a long,
Oh, gosh, it's been a while. Shame on me for not knowing. How long?
Many years.
man.
Well, our new center was donated to us. We always worked out of storefront, so attendance went up high. And prior to us, New Horizons had it. So I think I've been with the Mental Health Association 10 years. I think it's been probably 20.
Oh, at least.
And it's a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, St. Lucie County does not have a drop-in center, but we run one in Martin County and Okeechobee. So a lot of the mental health court clients, because we have our peer support specialist for mental health court over there, so it's worked out really wonderfully because they get enveloped into the drop-in, and then when they graduate mental health court, they have that peer support. And yes, I mean, the attendance has been lower. We cleaned up a lot of clients because it's a little bit different, and we call them members. I'm sorry, they're not clients. But, you know, some people may come only once a month. Some may come once every 6 months. So a lot of that had to do with kind of cleaning up the system. We were running attendance and also starting recovery support groups, whole health action management, and a lot of things to improve their lives, their health. So I think, you know, a lot of that it's very encompassing. So, and again, it's open 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So, and then we also run a veteran support group out of that center on Wednesday nights every week.
Thank you.
A local resident, Karen Black, and her family donated the house to us, so a big thank you to her and her family. Her mother recently passed, but they have always been very good to us and very good to the center. If we ever need anything, they're always there. So thank you, Karen.
And going back to the startup, if it wasn't for the hospital district and me nagging Frank and Jenny a lot, we weren't able to open the parent-child center because timing was off for Impact 100 grant and the opportunity was there. So we appreciate the support, and I would never ask hospital district for rent. Of course, that stopped and we're on a fee for service. And it was really helpful because we couldn't have that today if it wasn't for the hospital district.
I don't know if there's much you can add, but because of Suncoast leaving, I mean, how's it gonna impact what's going on? What,
Well, we do have a meeting scheduled. We're gonna talk to Frank. Frank so
That he's
graciously,
referenced,
you know, he's so great. We've done this before, but he's rallied the community. We see how many patients are needed to be seen immediately, and we divvy them up appropriately, and we get it done. So that's what we're gonna do. We'll take a portion. We'll take some of their psychiatric load off as well. Some of the other agencies, I'm sure they're, you know, we'll all chip in. Because that's what we do here. We don't silo, we work together, and we get things done.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Once again, thanks.
Thank you.
thank you for your
excellent
work.
Congrats again.
Excellent, excellent work. Okay, we have two written only reports, the Mental Health Collaborative and the Learning Alliance, which we'll note. Any comments from the Board of Trustees related to those written reports? Okay. Moving along, any unfinished business?
I meant to call you, Frank, and ask you about this, and I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
We kind of teed something up last month, which is TCCH and their $1 million request to make a pledge commitment to them. We said we were bringing it back, but I didn't see it on the agenda. I don't know if that's unfinished business or other business, but
Well, I can
wanted to
update you on
mention
where
it.
we are.
Okay.
So we did, you know, we had some questions. One of our trustees, Carrie, had some questions and sent them over. And we had those, you know, we answered those questions. You know, there were some for the district staff and some from, for TCCH to answer. And so Loretta, you know, sent those back to us, and then we answered the other ones for Carrie and sent them on. So, so we, yeah, that's where we sit. You know, my thought was to wait to see who the chairman was going to be and, you know, discuss, you know, whether or not we put this on the February chairman's agenda, and just, you know, see where the board wanted to go with it. I know that they're, you know, they are on a timeline, but the most important thing is that I want to be sure that any trustees who have questions have an opportunity to have those questions thoroughly answered before a funding decision is made. If there's data and analysis that needs to be requested, more data. They have a lot of data and they have a lot of good information, so they'll be happy to share that. But I just want to make sure that the trustees are satisfied before we move forward with that. So, you know, it's up to our chairman if we can discuss putting that on the February agenda or whatever you'd like to do with that.
Well, as I understand, the TCCH has to first raise the $4 million from local sources, and then the $1 million becomes applied. You want to comment regarding that? Is that not the case? Or Vicki?
I'm going to let Loretta answer it. She's deeply involved in the numbers at this moment.
Tell us where we are.
So we have a commitment of $15 million through the New Markets Tax Credit Program. We have invested $2 million of our own already, and we've raised about $1 million, so we've got another $3 million to raise. The district's $1 million would be matched on a 3-to-1 basis by New Markets if it were committed before we do the closing. And that was why we had, we were working under a timing constraint.
What is the timing constraint again, please?
Well, it's, you know, we would have liked to close this at the beginning of February. Quite honestly, we're not there in terms of what we've needed to raise in order to be able to do that.
I'm going to bail you out.
Thank you. I would see that.
Just like everything in the project that we've been working on for the pediatric center, as well as some permitting for our west location. These two projects, are bundled together. And so we are continuing to see the dates get pushed back because of permitting separately from the New Markets Tax Credit. All of those documents are coming together, but again, the permitting is a holdup. They're not going to have us close until everything is a go. as one would expect. So it really is sitting between the 15th and the 28th of February at this point for closing. But again, all of our capital investments towards this new market tax credit has to be in place before the closing. So.
And by in place, you just mean the commitment, not the check in hand.
Exactly. We have to have a written commitment for these funds, and it can be stretched over a 4-year period.
So then if we had the discussion at the February chairman's meeting or the 19th or 20th, we're still in that time frame, I take it. Is that correct?
It's pushing it, but they will work with us.
Very good.
Okay?
Thank you for clarifying
Appreciate
that,
it.
yes.
Thank you.
Any other unfinished business? I have just one, actually. I was on this third year plus on the board, and I've always recall a discussion regarding the Sober Living Center. And it was on our agenda, and I think when we had a strategic planning, it was on that. So I just want to thank again Karen and Jennifer and Frank for all the work put into that. And it's always been my impression that this was kind of a given that we have centers for men for alcoholism and drug abuse. We definitely would have a Sober Women Center for women. That, to me, was just a slam dunk. And I guess my thought process was you'd do that and you'd have a center. And once you have a center, then you develop a program. So from my standpoint, I always thought the program, when I remember discussing with you, Frank, and I thought at our strategic planning, there always would be, the program would be the next step. It's kind of putting otherwise the cart before the horse. So I don't know if there are.
Correct, and we have many options. You know, we're at the beginning point. The initial goal was to secure the property that would be suitable for the program. And there was a lot of discussion about, you know, what that would look like in securing that. And now we're at the point where we are going to, you know, move forward with developing an RFP, which we're going to work with an external consultant because, as I mentioned, we don't have the expertise for that. But there will be many options to bring to the trustees on what this structured program would look like, and we could decide what's going to be the best fit. The trustees can decide what's going to be the best fit for our need and the county. But, you know, again, our goal is not an operator in this. Our goal was to secure the property because there's a huge upfront expense. We know it's a $4 million upfront expense, which we just saved the operator to serve a longtime need in our county.
Thank you. I want to thank Karen really for leading all this moving forward. It's very important. I don't know if you have any further comments, but
I think it's a wonderful program, and we were able to secure the building that fits the program perfectly. It was just it worked. It was great, and look forward to the process of securing the provider of the services.
okay. Any other comments related to that? But thank you very much for moving that forward. Let's move now to the new business and the audit report by Kip Jacoby. It's quite extensive. I've enjoyed reading it and learned a lot, actually.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I have two reports I'm going to cover with you. I'll go through the audited financial statements first, and then we'll get into the agreed upon procedures report. I believe it's been disseminated out to everyone so you can follow along. The page numbers are at the bottom of the pages, so as I refer to things to kind of point you in where I'm talking. So I should start out by saying and reporting that last week we met with the Finance and Audit Committee. We spent over an hour, between an hour and a half, going through in detail the various sections of the report and the financial information. So your committee worked well through that process, and they provided input, and so that's culminated in the document that you see before you. Since we went through in such detail, I will spare you the hour and a half version of that discussion, and I'll go through and highlight some things. Stop me, ask questions as you see something that you'd like to get a little bit more into detail about. So, having said that, as you work through the title pages and the audit report, which is a fair amount of verbiage that is all boilerplate and basically concludes that the financial statements are fairly presented. It's an unmodified audit report. There's no issues with respect to the information that's in the document. So probably one of the most important sections is the first section that you come to, which is the management's discussion and analysis. It's where you, as the managers and trustees of the financial information, have a chance to go through the various different salient points of operations during the past year and provide financial as well as operational discussion. It's been expanded this year. Several pages. It provides really a wealth of information about some of the background activities of the district. But on page 4, I'll just highlight a few things. Table 1 is an overview of the millage. It provides an overview at the county level, so there's some $26.5 billion of valuation that supported the tax revenues for the district during this past fiscal year. That's up about 13.5% from the prior year, which is up about 13.5% from the year before that. So it's been growing at a significant pace over the last couple of years. Total millage charged in the county is just under 14 mills, 13.92 mills, of which the district is less than 1 mill, in fact, at 0.51 mills, and that was static from the prior year. So it represents about 3.67% of the total mills that are charged to the residents in the county. Down at the bottom underneath the table gives you kind of a 4-year presentation. The millage has been relatively low compared to your authorized millage and is projected to be, or has been approved at $76.50 for the upcoming year, was at $51.10 for 2 years, which had been lowered from the $71.44 the year before those 2 years. In more detailed discussion on page 5, Frank has provided quite an overview of the millage information and some of the reasons therefore, so I invite you to read through that information. You get into the major initiatives of the district for several pages, and again, I invite you to read through those. It provides a wealth of information about your operations that really support the financial results that you had. Beginning on the bottom of page 10, you begin to go through the financial highlights, and there's several bullet point discussions there. But I'd like to go to page 12, if I may, and get into the 2 tables of presentation. The first table, table 3, being in essence your balance sheet, the statement of assets, liabilities, and net position, and relatively consistent between the 2 years. This is capsulized information. There's more detailed information in the supporting financial statements, but this is a good place to kind of see where the financial information is. In total, for the year ended September 30, 24, your total assets were $12,287,901, and most of that, $10.9 million, was in cash and investments and some other minor financial-related assets. Capital assets stood at a net of $1,385,000. Your liabilities, $1,633,000, and current liabilities, essentially your normal monthly liabilities and bills that you receive and pay in the following month, up from the prior year, and essentially that's a timing situation as it fluctuates from month to month. You have no real district debt, no bonds, no borrowings to support your operations. The long-term liability that you see there is the liability associated with the leasing of the facilities that you house your office in. So overall, of your liabilities, your net position that supports your assets, $10,593,909, of which $1,237,000 is capital related, and $9,356,829 is your unrestricted net financial position. And that is virtually consistent with the prior year of $9,373,000. Table 4 gives you an overview of your revenues and expenses. Total revenues in 2024, $12,810,000, up from the $11,404,000. If you remember Table 1, essentially. Your millage rate was the same. The valuation increase in the supporting property values drove the increase in the net revenues. The other income was rental income you had previously, which went away during fiscal '23. Total operating expenses, $17,342,000, up fairly significantly from the $12,499,000. Most of that, of course, relates to the indigent care and program funding of some $16,042,000, up from the $11,431,000 in the prior year. Administrative expenses were also up about 22% over the prior year. And if we flip, well, before we flip, the next page gets into more discussion and detail about those expenses. A kind of a one-off transaction, of course, was the sale of the property related to hospice, and that generated $3.8 million of proceeds. So that was kind of a one-time transaction and is referred to as a non-operating revenue. And then investment income, $696,000, up from the $543,000 in the prior year, as you continue to invest, as Michael went through earlier in the meeting, you continue to invest your cash balances in investments. Okay, so again, page 13 gets into some discussion about the program revenues and some of the more significant programs and the discussion behind the increases in those fundings, and along with the administrative expenses. And of course, part of the reason for the administrative expense increase was you went through a first-time performance audit and paid for that during this past fiscal year, as well as the consulting expenses that you've incurred associated with the sale. So again, continuing with the expense presentation, Table 5 on page 14 gives you an overview of the various different agencies that you have funded during this past year and in comparison to the prior year. So it's a detailed listing of each agency, and so I invite you to read through that. As we continue on, page 15, Table 6, we get into an overview of the capital structure, capital assets. Again, fairly minimal for the organization and fairly static, no significant changes in that. And again, no long-term debt or debt financing for the organization. You have a few leases, and it gets into that discussion. And then on page 16, it gives you an overview of your budget versus actual comparisons. You had budgeted for $16.9 million in operating revenues and non-operating revenues, and you realized $17.6 million, so you had a favorable variance of $657,000. Overall, your expenses were budgeted at $18,061,000, and they came in at $17,646,000 for, again, a favorable variance of $415,000, yielding an overall actual to budget comparison of a favorable variance of $1,073,000. And then the last section of the MD&A is an opportunity for management to now, instead of looking at the historical perspective of where your financial information and activity went, it's a more forward-looking view of the organization and what you're faced. And so there are several pages of factors bearing on the future plans for the organization. It goes into a budgeting and operational discussion and for several pages. And so again, I invite you to read that information. So having gotten through the MD&A, you get into the more detailed financial information. I will kind of zip past through those financial statements as in essence they provide a little bit more detail, but do provide the same information that we just went through. They're supported by various different footnotes, accounting policies, which are the appropriate policies for the district. And might pause at page 26, footnote 2. Again, somewhat akin to what Michael went through earlier in the meeting, gives you an overview of the various different investments that you're in. And the key there is that when you look at the character of those investments, they qualify as part of the governmental special district investments that you're invested in as appropriate in accordance with the Florida statutes. Let's see. There are obviously more additional supporting footnotes. We've, in essence, covered some of those. So I can go to page 31, footnote 10. And this is the last footnote of the detailed financial statements, and it provides a discussion about subsequent events, and it reports in the first paragraph of activity, it talks about the budgeted program expenses that you've approved in the upcoming year of some 18.9 million. The next paragraph gets into the purchase or the commitment for the providers of VCOM and the agreement that you've entered into there. And then the third paragraph gets into the purchase that we just talked about in terms of the former Children's Home Society program. So that gives you the support for the financial activity. The last section of the report gets into required compliance and internal control type letters. Again, the first letter of a couple pages is standard boilerplate, clean, unmodified, no issues to identify. The management letter also continues for several pages and addresses certain required matters from the Florida Auditor General's office. Again, no issues to report there. And then the last page is the required report on the public investments. And again, no issues. So a very clean report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions with respect to the financials.
Any questions, Michael, or perhaps Alan Jones? I guess that was pretty clear.
Yeah, okay.
No, I think it's a great report. Congratulations to y'all.
It is. It's obviously, as Michael started out in his presentation, you're in a good, strong financial position, and it's a good report. If I may turn to the agreed upon procedures report. This is a special project that we've done for you each year where we've, at your request, have gone in and looked at the detailed pay-for-service programs where you have individuals that are supported and are required to qualify under your indigent care provisions and policies. And so if I can talk through this report, it again is also, I would say, a good report. You strive to be perfect in everything in terms of the funding and the approval process. We strive to find a few little holes and exceptions in the process, and so we both succeeded, I would suggest. But it's a very good report, and so if I can have you turn to page 1, this provides an overview of those. We looked at the 6 different agencies. There were some 4,887 patients in the population among those 6 agencies, of which we selected and tested 346 of those patients. So a little bit less than 10%, about 7%. I can't tell you exactly because some of that 4,800 are probably duplicate among the agencies. So, but it's a good representation. The process essentially is born out of attribute testing. It's not so much detailed dollar value testing, but we're looking for the attributes of when you look at the patient's file and supporting information, did it comply with the district's policy for identifications, residency, proof of income, those kinds of things. So it's either a yes or a no answer to the question, was the information there? So as you look through, you'll see that in each of the agencies, except for the one, we found one exception out of the sampling that we tested. And if you flip to the next page, there's a schedule that provides the financial related component to those exceptions. And I would say of the years that we've been doing this testing, this is probably the lowest dollar amount of exceptions that we've come across. So,
About half of last year.
yeah, 14,487 compared to 26,271 in the prior year. And I would suggest to you, when you look at these exceptions, Again, it's a very strict yes or no question. In each of these, it would be my assessment subjectively that when you look at the preponderance of information, I would suggest that they are still good and valid distributions qualifying under your indigent care program. It's just that they were missing a piece of information or here and there. So when you look at these results, thinking back over the years, I have to say that, you know, individually, the agencies used to compile this information, and there was really no review at the district level. When the HD program was put in place and you began having a central house, clearinghouse of the information, you started to see these exceptions coming down pretty significantly. And so that process, in my view, has really worked quite well. So you can look down and see in terms of the applications unsigned or missing letters of support where there's an indication that somebody has no income, you're required to have some indication of support for your living expenses. Some of that information being missing, or proof of residency where one of the documents was missing out of the portfolio information. So overall, again, I can get each of the detailed agency reports are in there that provide some detailed discussion. They're fairly similar, but there are specifics to each of their exceptions that we found. Again, I think a very clean report when you look at the magnitude of the activity that we looked at.
Thank you so very much, really. As I said, it was educational to go through all the different programs and how the funds are distributed. Very nice job from, well, of course, Michael and both Frank and in your committee, your Finance Review Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to acknowledge Caitlin Dickens, because this is the lowest, to your point, Kip, this is one of the best results we've had, and while she doesn't like any credit, she's largely responsible for this result.
Well done.
Well done.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Any
It takes a village.
Not a question, just a statement. We just finished our performance review, which we won't have to live through till 4 years from now, I guess. But the fact is, on an annual basis, this is something that we've always undertaken. It's continued to get better, and this is just another document, and it's testimony to the fact that we are working hard to make sure these tax dollars are spent the way they're supposed to be, to qualified folks in need, and it's an important it's as important in some respects as the audit is, I think. It helps to certify the accountability, and doing the report suggests transparency in the review, et cetera. So I've enjoyed seeing that as much as the audit the last 3 years.
Dr. Mackett?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In that spirit, I would like to commend the agencies that were audited in their diligence in adhering to our indigent care funding policy, so thank you.
Any other comments? I think we need an action, a motion to accept the audit reports.
I would so move.
Second.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. Any other questions or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you again, Mr.
Thank you, Kip.
Thank you.
And Emily.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, is there any other business to bring before our trustees? Seeing none, are there public comments, please, from those in attendance or perhaps those who are on Zoom? Any comments from the public, please? Hearing none or seeing none indicated, then I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for attending. Again, very, very excellent organizational skills related to, thank you, Jennifer, for that, and through the process of nominations and understanding our duties related to the laws of running these organizations. So thank you again for your work in that regard. We are adjourned.